Hi, my name is Sarah Jo Greer. I chose Carnation Lily Lily Rose by John Singer Sargent from 1885. Um, the first lesson to go over would be the social studies and art history. Um, I would introduce the painting and discuss the factors that shaped British colonial America. So, in a time of America's growth, the country molded a lot of itself off of what the British had taught them thus far. I bring this up because of the clothing seen in the image. These girls are wearing gowns that were influenced from the British. This, along with landowners, farmers, and artisans, among others, were an influence to America. The standard I chose was SS4H3B. Describe colonial life in America as experienced by various people, including large landowners, farmers, artisans, women, indentured servants, slaves, and Native Americans. The two objectives would be that students will remember the connection between the gowns and the British colonial American times, and that students will understand landowners, farmers, artisans, women, indentured servants, slaves, and Native American roles in this time period. From the two objectives, I used the two verbs remember and understand. I pulled these from Bloom's taxonomy, the lowest level of thinking. The abbreviated social studies lesson would be that I would show the students the work and ask them to point out what they see. I would either have to wait for the student to point it out, or I would eventually have to point out the gowns that the girls are wearing. I would discuss the culture at that time and the influence the British had on it. Students will create a paper doll of their choice: landowner, farmer, artisan, woman, or Native American. The two assessments that would come out of this would be that I would collectively, as a class, ask the students to respond repetitively throughout the lesson what the gowns connect to and vice versa. The students will present their paper doll and which character they chose from the British colonial American time. That concludes the social studies and art history lesson. For the second mini lesson with language arts and aesthetics, I would ask them 3 aesthetic questions. What is the most interesting section of this artwork? Referencing, of course, Carnation Lily Lily Rose. Does this artwork have any special meaning for you? And ask them to list some adjectives to describe this artwork. The standard I chose was ELA GSE 4RI7. Interpret information presented visually, orally, or quantitatively. And this is through charts, graphs, diagrams, timelines, animations, or interactive elements on web pages. And explain how the information contributes to an understanding of the text in which it appears. The objectives I would get asked them, or expect them to have, would be students will understand their own interpretation of the work of art and record those thoughts in their journal. Students will evaluate a peer's thoughts and see if they had the same or different thoughts about the work. The abbreviated lesson I would show them again the artwork and hold a discussion about it, asking questions about what they see, what they like, and what they don't like. I will then present the 3 aesthetic questions to them, which they will record the answers to in their journal. We will have a group discussion, and some of the students will share their answers. Then the students will pair off and have an individual discussion about what they thought about the work. The 2 assessments I would give in this language lesson would be, first, the students will have made their understanding of the work clear by recording their own personal thoughts and opinions in the journal. These thoughts will be reviewed by the teacher at the end of the lesson. The second assessment would be students will report to one another what their partner thought the work was like, showing their capability of evaluating. That concludes the language lesson. Moving on to the math and art criticism mini lesson. I would introduce the painting and have a discussion about 4 art criticism questions. They would describe, make a list of exactly what they see: people, places, objects, shapes, and forms. They would analyze, describe the pictures and design relating to elements and principles of art, and specifically where they are located in the work. They would interpret, what is the work's subject? What is the artist saying? What is the story? And finally would judge, what degree of uniqueness has the artist displayed in this artwork? The standard I chose was MGSE 4G1 to draw points, lines, line segments, rays, angles, and perpendicular and parallel lines. Identify these in 2-dimensional figures. The two objectives that I would give would that students will apply their knowledge of points, lines, line segments, angles, and perpendicular and parallel lines. Students will also understand the method of critiquing a piece of art. Again, these two verbs, apply and understand, coming from Bloom's taxonomy. The abbreviated lesson would consist of me showing them the artwork, asking them what they see, what they like, and what they don't like. I would propose the criticism questions to them, and once they have completed answering them, I will ask them to return to their first question they answered. Students will then go through the list they made in their first answer, and within every object they listed, recognize at least one of the objects listed in the standard in everything they listed. Every object in the standard has to be pointed out at least once. So to go in more detail on that, if it wasn't clear, they would have listed a flower, so they would have to go back to the standard and say whether or not a line segment, a ray, an angle, perpendicular parallel lines were within that flower. And they would have to go through the list that they made, answering that first describing question to get across that math standard. The two assessments consisted in this math lesson would first be students will have proven their ability to apply their knowledge of those objects by showing the instructor their connection between them and those in the painting. Then the students also would be expected to understand the method of critiquing a piece of art by presenting their answers to their questions to the instructor. That concludes the math mini lesson. Finally, the science and art project. I would introduce the work of art and ask the students what they see, what they like, and what they don't like. I will wait for the paper lanterns to be pointed out in the painting and begin a discussion about paper lanterns and how we will be making our very own paper lanterns that day. The standard I chose was S4P1A. Plan and carry out investigations to observe and record how light interacts with various materials to classify them as opaque, transparent, or translucent. The visual art standard I chose was to create sculptures or three-dimensional form using selected method or techniques, such as paper mache, paper sculpture, assemblage, or found object sculpture. The two objectives that would be given through this lesson, with the science objective being students will understand how light interacts with different materials through the art activity, as well as the visual arts objective, with it being the art project. The student will create a mini paper lantern. They will need a wire frame, a fake candle flame, just one of those light up clicky things, construction paper, tissue paper, and cling wrap. After being instructed the differences between opaque, transparent, or translucent, students will have the option to make an opaque lantern, a transparent lantern, or a translucent lantern. They can decorate their construction paper, tissue paper, or cling wrap however they wish. They will then wrap their shade of choice around the wire frame and seal it, whether with glue, tape, or staples, depending on their shade. They will lower the fake candle flame into the lamp. There will be a home for it built within the frame. And they have themselves a lantern that will sit on their desk or hang from the ceiling if the instructor chooses to. These lanterns won't be as large as the ones in the artwork, but most likely as big as a guinea pig, can be held in both hands. Probably about this big. Nothing too obnoxious or overwhelming. I will point out the painting and ask the students what they see, what they like, and what they don't like. I will bring up the paper lanterns and ask them if they can see the literal flame or just the light that is giving off. That is translucent. I will go further into the meaning of translucent and then go into opaque and transparent objects and ask for the students for examples they can think of once they have a grasp on the definitions. The two assessments for this science and art lesson would first be the science assessment. Students will present their lantern and name which craft they used and which type of light is emitted from the craft. This will show their understanding of the three different options: transparent, opaque, or translucent. The second assessment, being the visual arts assessment, would be students will have created a three-dimensional sculpture by creating the paper lantern and presenting theirs to the class. That concludes my 4 mini lessons. I hope I did an okay job presenting it to you. I hope you have a good day. Thank you.